What's the biggest bullet you've ever dodged? I had 2 job offers in different states at the same time. The one I didn't take was offering more money, but I just didn't gel with the guy who would be my boss and really liked the guy who would be my boss at the lower offer. The better offer was in a state I had always wanted to live in, for a company I admired, but something felt off, so I went with the lower offer. I ended up meeting my wife in the city of the lower offer. Meanwhile, the company that had given me the higher offer abruptly closed and laid off their entire staff with no severance. So if I had taken that, I would have been stuck on the other side of the country with no job and no money. A literal one. A friend was showing off some handguns he bought with his first paycheck. Checked the chamber to make sure nothing was there, sighted at me and pulled the trigger. Of course, the gun was loaded. Bullet passed over my right shoulder and buried itself in a chair. We aren't friends anymore for some odd reason. I broke my lease and moved out of a terrible apartment complex I was living in to move back home because I was broke. 2 weeks later, the whole complex burned to the ground from a meth lab in another unit. A few edits for some commonly asked questions. I didn't have renter's insurance, broke 20yo at the time, so wouldn't have got any kickback from that. I did end up getting my security deposit back, which they said I had forfeit by breaking the lease, so that was nice. That meth lab wasn't mine. I packed mine up and brought it back to Florida with me where it belonged. 2005, my friend and I evacuated New Orleans 2 days before Hurricane Katrina and drove to Mississippi with the little money we had. We were trying to decide on where to stay for the night, and it was between a mid-range hotel or the really cheap motel. Decided to spend a little more for the hotel. During the night, the eye of the storm came through Mississippi and flattened the roof of the motel we decided against. In 1996, my parents were deciding between 2 houses to move into. They picked the new construction that resulted in being placed on shoddy soil, and years of lawsuits when we ultimately moved in 2001. Anyway, the other house they could have picked, presumably on better soil, would have placed my older sister at Columbine High School as a freshman for the 1998 to 1999 school year. Reading this at first this doesn't seem like a Dodge Buell. I got on an intercity bus and almost sat in the middle, but moved and sat at the back. The bus later collided with a truck and got opened up like a tin can. If I had sat where I originally intended, I would have been killed. I was late to my bus, and instead of running to catch it, I decided to miss it, and it was later hit by a speeding truck. Caught the one behind it and later saw the aftermath. 2 people died. I was booked on Pan Am Flight 103, which went down over Lockerbie, Scotland. I didn't have a premonition or anything supernatural. I just decided to cancel my seat. Didn't think anything of it until the plane went down, and my mother had written down my flight plan and reminded me. This was back in the day when you could cancel without a penalty up to a couple of days in advance. Pro tip: to avoid the few days away cancellation fees, call or go online and reschedule the flight for a week or 2 out. Then wait a day and cancel. Not me. A Dutch mate of mine living in Tasmania had to visit his sick mum in Amsterdam. Booking his flight online, he said to his wife, "You know, I'm sick of flying Malaysian Airlines. The food is shit, the hosties are miserable. It'll cost more, but I'm booking with Singapore." So, instead of dying on MH17, he was on a plane 40 kilometers ahead of it. Sold my bar and grill business in August 2019. Sold my 3 restaurants in February 2020. For way more than they were worth. Now 2 have closed. I was out kayaking on a lake and several bullets whizzed by me. There was a distinct crack buzz sound as it went by. I think some people were just out plinking in their backyard, adjacent to the lake, and didn't think a backstop was necessary. This also happened to me a few weeks later when I was paddling on a small stream. Bullets whizzed by above the bank, just over my head. I don't think anyone knew I was there either time. Regardless, when you go out and shoot stuff, make sure there's a backstop. Also, I don't know how big the bullets were, so I'm unsure which was the biggest bullet dodged. As a dead guy, I would be so pissed off to learn my life ended because I was floating in a goddamn boat at the wrong second. Physically? A bus. I grew up in Bermuda, and since it is such a small island, cars are limited to 1 per family, and everyone drives mopeds. I was driving into town and came up to a red light behind a bus. As is tradition, I scooted around the bus to be in the front of the line of traffic. Literally 2 seconds later, a second bus smashed into the back of the first bus at like 30 miles per hour. I would have been pancaked. Without question, 100% dead. I just sat on the side of the road for a bit and thought about my mortality. Had a friend who asked if I wanted to move to CA with him and his family. I was 16 and thought it sounded fun. I didn't know at the time, but he was actually rescuing me from my insane mother and a not-so-happy home life. When you are abused, sometimes it is hard to know you are abused until you become an adult and gain a perspective. I shudder to think what would have happened to me if I had stayed there. That's interesting. Can you elaborate on the situation if you don't mind? Like, were you close with them that they'd be okay to live with them in their same house? And if so, are you still close with them? If you don't mind. I only knew him for a year, but we became best friends. It was a weird situation. I only met the parents once before I moved out there with them. I was initially supposed to stay just for the summer, but I was told that I could stay longer if I wanted. I think this gave us both an out if things didn't work out. I ended up finishing my last year of high school living with them and stayed until I was 21. The father has since passed, but I am still in touch with my friend. I didn't really find out that they were rescuing me until way later, when the mother told me that my friend told her about my home life to convince her to let me move in. I had no idea at the time. I was at the Tacoma Mall when the Tacoma Mall shooting happened, walking right towards where the gunman opened fire when my then fiancée decided to go back into a store we were just in. No shit, the time it took us to get back to the store was the same amount of time it would have taken to be right where it all broke out. 10 seconds one direction or 10 seconds in the other. Hearing the screams and gunshots echoing in the mall was crazy. They locked us in the Suncoast Video store for a while before having us exit out the back. My dad's buddy was one of the people shot at the Tacoma Mall. Unfortunately, he passed away about a year later as a result of his injury. What an awful event. I'm glad you're okay. Not me, but my dad. He traveled to London for work back from 2001 to 2007. He was booked for the day off on July 7, 2005, as that is my birthday, and the train he normally got to work was one of the ones that was bombed by terrorists. When I was about 10 years old, I leaned backwards onto a tall bookcase shelf, which happened to have a sword collection on the highest shelf. Many of these swords had their blades exposed for show. And what would happen at that very moment? That shelf gave way and all of the swords came and landed on me, including my head. Surprisingly, I got not a single cut, no concussion, and only a small bruise on the head. And being young, I dismissed this incident with gracious forgetfulness. I once met a girl at a bar a few years ago. She was hot and she started a conversation with me. I don't remember about what. But at the end of it I wanted to ask her out. But being extremely shy, I couldn't. If she hadn't started to talk to me, I would have just admired and avoided her, being a big and awkward guy. Anyway, I went to the bathroom to clear my head, and when I came back I saw my friend who I came with asked her out. A total dick move because I told him I want to ask her out, and I just stand there with an awkward smile waiting for them to leave so I could drink my anger away. Couple of days after that, a mutual friend said that that friend from the bar was robbed by a girl he had brought to his apartment. So still today I get mixed feelings when I see him. I got wasted on freshly cooked plum spirit, in the middle of winter, in the mountains southwest of France. Decided to fuck off home instead of sleeping it off. I was staying with some friends, 1 kilometer away, so it wasn't a long walk. The friends I was staying with wanted to party a bit longer. 4 hours later, I dodged a bullet when they checked to see if I was there instead of going straight to bed. They retraced me steps, and found me in a ditch, covered in snow, and probably piss, with my fly open, across the street from where I left the party. 100% would have died of hypothermia since it was freezing and snowing, and I didn't wake up from that coma until the next day. I was a teen driver not paying attention at an intersection at the crest of a hill with low visibility when the light turned green. The car behind me honked, and just as I was about to go, a truck barreled through the red light on the perpendicular road at decidedly ludicrous speed. If I had been paying attention and gone when the light turned green, I very likely would have been T-boned to death. Closest call I've ever had. Not me, but my friend. We were in a bar, and she was talking to a dude she met on Tinder. When she turned around, I saw him put something into her beer. I walked up, pretended to stumble, and knocked it out of her hand. Apologized, told her I'd buy her next beer, and when we walked over to the bar, I told her what he did. We left right after, decided to grab a case of beer and play Mario Kart that night instead. I only tagged along because she asked me to, which I'm always perfectly happy to do. Glad I did. Pro tip to people: if you aren't in a shitty establishment, tell the bartender. The rapist may get some repercussions, at least kicked out. If you're in a shitty establishment, just GTFO. If the rapist is a regular, the staff may have their back, could get sketchy for you. I should probably add this as an edit, but he wasn't a regular. She wanted to leave, so we did. I called my friend that works there as a bouncer and told him what happened. Later, the owner got in contact with us to talk about it. He's banned from that bar and several others, and they added one of those angel shot menus in the women's bathroom for girls that might be in an uncomfortable situation and need some help. What's the biggest bullet you've ever dodged? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.